Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 125 episodes of mead making, education, information, and entertainment. More than 80 guests have stopped by the Mead House. Professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey specialists have all visited to share their knowledge. The Mead House is produced by home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. Hey, you can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. And when you get some time, please take the survey located on the website, themeadhouse.com/survey. We'd like to hear from you. The Mead House. Mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Home brewing is one of humanity's oldest activities. We have proof of it from many archaeological sites. Boy, this is a bad night. Let me do this again.
You want me to do it? Or
take 4. I might even leave.
Drink, JD. Take a couple of gulps, whatever's in your cup.
I know. I might leave this part in. Home brewing is one of humanity's oldest activities. We have proof of it from many archaeological sites. Today's home brewing is fast becoming a national pastime, and what better way to keep your home brew clean and sanitary than with products from Logic. Makers of one-step no-rinse cleaner, straight A label remover, barrel OxyFresh for cleaning barrels, and Sandstep acid sanitizer. Please visit EcoLogic Cleansers. Let me get that one right. EcoLogicCleansers.com for more information on the only products you'll need to keep a safe, clean, and sanitized brewing environment for your home brew. Hey, thank you, Logic, for your support for the 2019 Iron Bee. Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 127. You can catch the podcast on all the usual suspects like iTunes and Stitcher Radio. They're all listed on the website, themeadhouse.com. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. Talk to us. We're on Facebook and Twitter, both at the Mead House. Jeff and Ryan are in the house. I'm JD Webb. Hey, in this episode, Iron Bee winner Brett Guthrie stops by the house. We'll get his thoughts on how he put a winning mead together using the secret ingredient and his plans for future brews. In segment 2, kegging and carving your mead or homebrew. We'll walk through some steps on how we each keg our own homebrew. And in segment 3, we're going to tackle a few Facebook friends when we get to it. So all that and more here at the Mead House. But first, hey, thanks to all the Mead House key holders who help keep the Mead House podcast free. You too can become a Mead House key holder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts to send you, and get on over to patreon.com. Just search for the Mead House, or just click on the link in the show notes. Hey, what are we drinking tonight? Double fisting it seems to be like the thing around here now. So tonight, in my first fist, drug out a bottle of Blanton's. This is probably, if anybody, I guess if I were to come up with a favorite, I mean, I like all kinds of bourbons, but this would have to rise to the top of the list. Blanton's is really good. I love it. The original single barrel bourbon whiskey, this bottle was dumped on 1/9/2017 from barrel 547. It was in warehouse 14 and Rick number 16. It's 93 proof, and this stuff is really amazing. Now, you know, the one reason why, man, I've been accused of talking a lot about bourbon here at the meat house, and I'm guilty. But there's a reason for that. And the reason why I have so many labels on my shelf is because I do incorporate bourbons into my meads and into my braggots. And, this is a whole tasting thing. I don't want something that I don't like, incorporated into my mead. So when I buy a bourbon, it's because I want to taste it. I want to try it out. And if I like it, then it goes. It may go into one of my projects. So that's the reason why I talk a little bit about bourbon here at the Meat House. In my second glass, I don't know, Ryan. I'm going to guess this is from you. It's a black top. It's hazy. It's a dark. I'm going to say a dark, almost like a nut brown color, almost. It's got a nice flavor to it. There's some hops in it. I'm not quite sure what the hops are, but I get that right off the bat. There's some caramel flavor to it, a little bit of sweetness on the back end. Had a nice head of foam on it when I poured it in the glass. I have no idea what it is, but it's good. You don't have any idea what it is either.
No, I was gonna say that is probably, because I'm trying to remember everything that I gave you, and so it's dark. It's I guess you'd say it's more of a brown than a black.
Yeah, more of a brown, a dark amber. I guess I. And
are you getting some good honey on the back end? At least on that, are you getting honey anywhere? Let me just start there.
A little bit, not much in the aroma yet, but the glass is still pretty cold.
Oh yeah,
and
that'll pack it down.
Yeah.
So what you're drinking there, I'm almost certain is one of those infamous pantry clean out braggots.
Yeah.
And that's one that is just steeped grains. So there was no mash involved. There was no malt extract involved. It was just a ton of specialty grains that were steeped. And then after I steeped them, I did a quick boil just to knock out anything that was hanging out on those grains.
Yeah.
And then cooled it down and added the honey, once it was kind of probably below 100, and then used that would have been the Hornindal Kavik yeast from Omega, and Brewer's Gold were the hops that were in that. So if you're getting some of the hops, that'd be the Brewer's Gold from
nice hop.
Yakima Chief.
Yeah, nice.
So that's what you're drinking there. I know there's a lot going on. It's just kind of one of those. I make about 2 batches a year of that. Maybe one's kind of a pantry clean out braggot, and one's a freezer clean out melomel. And the vintages change every year because it's just whatever happens to be in the pantry or the freezer that needs to get cleaned out.
Well, it's really malty. It's got a really nice mouthfeel to it. It finishes really well too. It doesn't leave your mouth. It leaves it clean. There's like a clean taste to it on the finish on the back end. It finishes a little on the dry side. I really liked it. This is really good. So I know this is a one of a kind. I will cherish it as the night goes on. So Jeff, you always have something pretty good in your glass. And if I'm to guess, I'm probably going to guess you're double fisting it too tonight. So
as a matter of fact,
what is it tonight?
I got 2 co-hosts. I still got several bottles of each of them. So today was a little colder, and I happen to have 2 labeled bottles, so I'm not playing roulette tonight. From JD, I've got one of these bourbon barrel ales. Really nice, getting some good malt from it. There's a lot of that woody bourbon barrel flavor to it. They meet real nice. It's just a good little, warms up your tummy kind of a drink.
Good.
And from Ryan here, I've got a tropical stout, very heavily carbonated. I'm drinking from the bottle, and the carbonation keeps trying to foam on and out, so I'm drinking this one a little faster. It's
shake it up and put your mouth lighter over the top.
Because I can be back in college again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little lighter than I would expect for a stout. It's got some nice kind of, I don't want to say they're tropical fruit flavors, but there's a little bit of like a little sweetness, a little acidity especially on the finish. And what is it I'm tasting? It's
I got a lot of roasted, almost like roasted barley, like a roasted something.
Yeah, there's definitely some roast character to it. I mean, it's a stout. That's kind of par for the course. There's something else to it that I'm having trouble putting my finger on. But yeah, as far as a stout goes, this is a great summer stout. It's light, it's refreshing, but it's still got that roasty character that makes it stouty. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with my selection tonight.
Good.
So, now again, we'd have to ask, Randy Mosier or something if we wanted to go into the, anthropology and the history of tropical stouts, in the 18th and 19th centuries. But in a recipe, one of the recipes that I was looking at that was under the heading tropical stout, there was a fair amount of molasses and brown sugar that were used in it. So there is I think there's about a pound or two of brown sugar in there, and then maybe a cup or so of molasses. So it's possible you're picking up on the molasses that is in that tropical stout.
Yeah, I think something along the molassesy line is what I'm having trouble putting my finger on. Yeah, I think you're right there. No, and I man, if I remember right, I think this style was actually like, it wasn't meant to be brewed in the tropics, but it was kind of in the same idea as an IPA, in that it was they made it stronger so that it would survive the journey to the tropics. I could be 180 off on that. If I am wrong, correct me, because I'm learning as I go too. But yeah, that was my impression here. They made those to survive longer sea voyages and kind of just fill the hole that they intended to take, like sugar or whatever it was that they were exporting from the tropics back to England. So yeah, that's my understanding. I could be way off on that.
All right.
There are a lot of books and blog posts and things out there that are things like, everything you thought you knew about beer history is wrong, or all the beer history things that you've been repeating are false.
Right.
So
so much of beer history is apocryphal. Yeah.
I tell you the truth, I think some of it might have been brewed in some of these tropical climates. It's possible that some was also sent to the tropical climates. But anyway, I'm glad that you are enjoying it, and that's great.
So what did you put in your glass?
In my cup tonight, I am drinking. Now, guys, this was put in a cask. I'm trying to find out what kind here. It just says hand-selected cask. So I'm not sure which one it is. Okay, anyway, it was put in a cask on the 23rd of September in 1997. 15 and a half years later, it was pulled out of the cask on Valentine's Day of 2013, and it's been in the bottle for about for 6+ more years, and now it's in my glass. Before you guys get excited and think this is some sort of mead, it's a 15-year single barrel Scotch.
single malt Scotch.
Single barrel, single malt.
Single barrel,
single malt, but it's everything came out of the same barrel.
Yeah.
So it's delicious. It's got notes of honey, vanilla, and oak. Those would be the three big flavors that I would pull out of this, and it's good. And I started doing a Scotch at happy hour, and I just kept that rolling and said, "Why change?" So that's what I'm drinking tonight.
Awesome. I went to my local brew shop to pick up some yeast, and I came back with some Scottish ale yeast. It's a good thing you turned me on to single malt scotches, Ryan, because one of the projects I have on my list is actually something along the lines of a Scotch ale, but I want to incorporate some wood soaked in one of these single malts. So again, I've got a collection of single malts, all your fault. I'm tasting each one, taking some mental notes of the stuff I like about them, and like my bourbons, I intend to incorporate, one of them into one of my meads. So good stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, I've got some single malt Scotch that I think I told you guys this, but I might as well remind everybody. I had a single malt Scotch somebody gave me. It's very good. It's just not one that I typically prefer. There's several different styles of Scotch, coming from the different regions in which it's made. And so I put it in a mason jar with some rum-soaked oak chips. Rum barrel chips that I had soaked. So they were rum barrel chips, and then I soaked them in more rum, and then I put them, now in this mason jar, this Scotch. One of my favorite Scotches, is the Balvenie 14, which is a 14-year-old single malt Scotch that's then put in a rum barrel for 6 months or something. Just gives it just another dimension. So trying to mimic that a little bit. Well, then I'm going to take those chips that have been sitting with the Scotch and add those to something. I've got a project in mind, but I don't want to go into it right now. I think I'd like to have it come to fruition, but it is a Scotch style mead. Not maybe some smoke, but not in the ways that we've seen people use smoke lately. I'm thinking about the way Ash and Paul have used smoke, and this is still going to get smoky, but it's going to come from a slightly different way. But I'll talk about that as that product develops. And
cool.
Well, anyway, let's get into our guest tonight. Brett Guthrie was one of the winners, the silver medalist from the Iron Bee Secret Ingredient event. He found his way to mead through the craft beer scene, and when one of his favorite spots had a make and take mead event or mead class, he signed up, and he was off to the races with making mead. That was 3 years ago, and he's been going since then. He likes to use now he is a Florida guy. Brett's a Florida guy. He likes to use his Cuban heritage and Florida lifestyle to incorporate lots of tropical flavors into his mead, and is currently working on cracking the code to make a perfect session mead that he can sit on the beach or the boat with.
Dude, I'm coming to Florida. I'm going to Florida.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No shirt, no shoes, no problem. It sounds like down there at the glass of mead. So, excellent. Let's talk about that. Welcome to the show, Brett. What's in your cup tonight, friend?
Well, how you guys doing?
Good.
We're doing great.
Excellent, excellent. I am drinking a passion fruit hibiscus session mead that I brewed up about a month ago. That, and in true mead house fashion, I have a bourbon here.
Yeah.
Double fisting it. It's Iron Smoke.
Iron Smoke?
Yeah, it's a new one. I haven't tried it yet. It's pretty fantastic. Nice oak, vanilla notes, and I'm enjoying it.
Do you know who the distillery is by chance?
It's called Iron Smoke Distillery.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll look it up. Good deal.
Excellent. So, Brett, first of all, we'll get this out of the way first, but congratulations on your Iron B medal. And tell us what you thought of working with the fenugreek and what you put together.
I put together a fenugreek maple curry mead. I tried to think outside the box on this one. I figured a lot of people were going to go with the berries and the sweet, so I wanted to go savory. And I went to the Flavor Bible, great source, thanks to you guys. And I saw that fenugreek was used in Indian cooking, so I figured, let's go with curry.
No, yeah, and the maple. So how did you incorporate the maple that you used?
That is back sweetened with maple syrup. I stabilized it and then back sweetened with the maple.
Now, Jeff was one of the judges at that table, and all three of us tried that mead. JD and I tried it after it had already been scored and medaled, so we were, trying it after the fact. Jeff, do you remember that one? Any of the specifics that you tried in Brett's mead?
Yeah, it was a very enjoyable mead. I mean, all of the three that won obviously were kind of knock our socks off great. I remember very clearly that it was, the fenugreek was there. It was light. It was pleasant. I didn't really get a lot of maple character, but I think I was probably conflating that with the fenugreek. So, it probably hit on that same kind of maple-ish flavor bar. The curry flavor came through really cleanly as well. The two of them were both, I wouldn't say light, but they weren't in your face like big flavors either. It was a nice, delicate mead. It had a really, really nice balance between the flavors, and it felt a little bit on the dry side. Kind of more along the lines of something that I tend to like anyway. I thought it was very nice. Should have practiced hand at getting those flavors just kind of right on the money.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So, if I could ask, what was we talked about it's a curry mead. Did you use a specific blend of curry spices? Did you make your own curry spices? What was
There's a local spice shop that carries a curry blend that I just adore. So I grabbed that and put it in a tea bag and dipped it in there and just kept tasting, and right till the point I pulled that bag out, right where I wanted it.
So you made a tea with just water and your tea bag with spices in it, and took it to...
No, I put it in a tea bag, like a coffee filter sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I put the curry in there, dipped it in there, and let it sit. I think it sat for 2 days, and then I pulled that bag out.
Okay, in secondary then.
Correct.
Good. Okay, gotcha.
Did you take the same approach with the fenugreek, or did the fenugreek get out at the primary?
No, everything was in secondary. I basically brewed a traditional and then just tinkered everything in secondary.
Is that, I think we've talked about this on the show before, guys, where, just take a traditional and then take it to the next level after the fact. Brett, is that something that you do quite often with your meads? Just do a traditional and then
for the lighter session stuff, definitely. That's the way I like to do it. Is just mess with everything on the back end.
Yeah, that's it's great when you're experimenting or want to create variants. I've got, I don't know, probably 10, 1 gallon jugs that, I'll make a 10-gallon batch for traditional and then break them off into those and start tinkering with different flavors and things like that. So it's a method that I like. And there are a few probably more than a few professional meaderies that do the same thing. They make a base traditional, and then after they make that base traditional, then they add their the different flavoring components to do that. So I've started doing that more and more. I had tried a couple of meads that had been made with the same ingredient. One, I think it was like blueberries or cherries or something, and one was fermented with the blueberries or the cherries, in primary, and then again, some tweaking, in secondary, and then one that was just done all in secondary. And I'll tell you, there's so much you can do in secondary or post fermentation, I should say, that it's, I'm not saying that you might not lose a little bit of complexity by doing some in primary, but there's a lot I've seen some very talented mead makers do after fermentation that kind of makes you think if that's the route that might just be viable for just about everything.
Brett, how did you get started in making meads?
Well, Cigar City Cider and Mead was having a class, a little make and take sort of thing, and I was like, all right, let's go do it. So Buddy and I drove up to Tampa. It was like a 2-hour drive, something like that, and we did the class and we fell in love. It's great.
Yeah. How did you first hear about mead?
Just through the beer scene type of thing. Bee Nectar got distributed down here, and the first mead I had was episode 13, and it just blew me away. And I was like, wow, this is something different. This is special. Yeah.
And you settled on it sounds like you like doing session meads.
I do, just for the Florida lifestyle. I want something I can drink outside in the sun on the beach type of thing,
I'm digging that, man. I live in Southern California, so kind of the same ballpark. It was 101. Yeah, it was 101 here today, so
you get it.
Yeah, I get it, man. I get that. I love it. When you first entered the competition, and you knew it was going to be a secret ingredient, but you didn't know what it was. What went through your mind when you got the package in the mail and discovered it was this strange stuff called fenugreek?
It's kind of funny because I was semi-familiar with the ingredient because my wife and I just had a baby about a year ago, and she was taking fenugreek as a supplement. So every time she would open the bottle, I would smell maple. And I was like, man, that smells like maple.
Yeah.
And then you sent me the ingredient. I was like, oh, okay, this is maple. So I tackled it like that, I kind of was familiar with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many iterations did you have to go through before you finally found the right combination with your curry and the fenugreek and everything, or did you just a shot in the dark, just put one together and call it done?
It really was all in. I figured I'm gonna either crash and burn or shine on this one. So it was a 1 gallon batch, and I just babied it.
Guys,
I like this guy's style, man. I'm digging this.
So Brett, I want to get back to your session aids for a second. Do you carbonate them? Do you leave them still? what's your?
I just started. I just bought the equipment pretty recently to start carbonating it. And what I'm drinking now, the passion fruit hibiscus, is my first one that I've carbonated. And I am really enjoying what the carbonation brings to the table.
Kind of changes the mouthfeel. Are
you kegging to carbonate? Is that what I heard?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I've sent these guys some really light session meats in the past, and they're always better. And I will say that, with a definite, they are always better when they're carbonated, especially, those light, easy drinking ones. Just gives them that, some more, just some more, something extra.
That's it right there.
When you, let's do this. When you've been doing this for a few years now, and remember back to when you first started, what advice would you give, Brett, to a mead maker who is just starting out and just discovering that you can ferment honey, water, and yeast and have something really delicious? What advice would you give them starting out?
It would have been, you asked me this a month ago, it would have been temperature control. But then Omega Yeast came out and just made everything change. So I would say
fake yeast have been a total game changer for the mead world, I think. We're
100%.
We're really cracking up.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
So I would have to say just don't get caught in a rut. Try new things.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're all about here at the Mead House. We're always trying to come up with, you made a comment at the top of the segment about thinking outside the box, and that's what we try to push the envelope here a little bit. And we may kind of harp on a few subject matter, over and over and over again, but I think what we bring to the table is the ability for mead makers to think outside the box, pick up on some kind of inspiration. I mean, the whole Iron Bay, I wish you could have been there, Brett. It was a wonderful experience. The inspirations that I came home with, just meeting fellow mead makers at the event, was incredible. I probably should have taken notes, but, and I'm glad I didn't, because I would have been writing all night long. But it was a wonderful experience, and we're so glad that you made the competition, and congratulations again from the Mead House on your silver at the Iron Bee. And my gosh, we hope to stay in contact with you. Keep in touch and let us know what you're doing. Have you got any plans now? Have you got anything in the fermenter?
Actually, I just filled up a barrel, a 10-gallon barrel, and I'm doing a Omega Yeast Kavik. I'm just going to ferment it right in the barrel.
Right in the barrel.
I'm going to try that out.
Yeah?
That's my next project.
Outstanding. Well, Brett, thanks for hanging out with us here at the Mead House tonight. And again, congratulations on your win there at the Iron Bee. I hope to hear more from you in the future, and would love to have you back on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet, Brett. Take care.
Thanks, Brett.
Have a nice one.
Thank you.
All right, Brett Guthrie here at the Mead House. The Iron Bee took the silver medal home, guys. I like this guy's style, thinking outside the box, not afraid to try new things.
I like that session needs to fit the Florida lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm thinking lots of tropical fruits, lots of nice session strength, probably some really pretty colors, some of those, neons and whatnot, and just, like an 80s windsuit.
Yeah.
But no, it's, I like that as well. I love that. He's talking about the passion fruit hibiscus, and I like just about everything with hibiscus. So that, we have to have him back and hear more about what he's putting together.
Yeah. The thing I liked about, what he was saying, if you picked up on it, he's using the environment that he lives in to guide his mead making experience. The Florida lifestyle. I mean, it's a carefree beach and umbrellas, passion fruit, tropical flavors fit right in. So he's letting his environment be his inspiration for his mead making. I mean, that's something I just, kind of popped in my head when listening to him talk.
Sure. I mean, people could whine about, oh, it's so hot, I can't temperature control, and blah, 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 blah. Lean into it. Do what you can with what you got, and you can come up with some amazing things. I mean, let your, you've got your natural produce in your area that's available to you. You've got your temperatures that are, swinging which way or the other, and you figure out what works in your area. You can get something really spectacular.
Well, he mentioned Omega Yeast. And I can't help but think maybe he heard that. I mean, I know he's an avid listener to the Mead House. He's gone all the way. I know he listened all the way back to episode 13. That's back a few years. I'm thinking he might have picked up on the Omega episode. When we discovered that, you can ferment at 100 degrees.
And it turns out better.
Yeah, and Ryan, I thought I saw somewhere in a text, you got a project going where you actually wrapped an electric blanket around a fermenter and you're fermenting at 100 degrees.
Yeah, so I'm using the Voss Kvik from Omega. And I want to get this up to 100 because the higher temperature that you ferment it at, the more of the flavor that you'll get out of this yeast. And if I was at your place, JD, I just put it on the balcony.
Just set it outside.
And leave it on the balcony. Well, my fermentation room is in the basement, and it's nice and cool down there. It'd be perfect for 71B or something like that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to crank this up, so wrapping a heating blanket. It's the first time I've done this. I don't know how well it's going to work, but it's an electric blanket around the fermenter, trying to get it to about 100 degrees. Got a temperature control on there, with the probe, between the blanket and the fermenter to kind of keep the temperature, measure the temperature, and keep it where it needs to be. And then I am going to kind of a split batch, or not a split batch, kind of a combination batch here, because I'm doing 6 gallons of mead done at that temperature, and then I'm also going to do 6 gallons of a beer at that temperature.
Okay.
And same yeast, and then I'm going to have right now.
Blend.
The braggot is kind of what I want to go for. So I'm going to take 3 gallons of the mead and just kind of bottle it as is. 3 gallons of the beer and bottle it as is, and then blend the 3 gallons of the mead, 3 gallons of the beer, and then have 6 gallons of this braggot. So, I'll end up with 3 gallons of mead, 3 gallons of beer, and 6 gallons of braggot. But I'm excited. I fermented this Kvik in the 90s, like maybe 90, like low 90s.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what happens to crank it all the way up to 100. And really, from what I've heard, is the higher you get, into those high 90s, 100 is when you start to really get some just in your face orange and honey, flavor from this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got the Hornadol, still to deal with. And I've been trying to think of something, something I want to do with that particular yeast. So I'm still kind of in the planning stage for that one. It's another one of those that ferments very well at high temperatures. I don't have a problem maintaining high temperatures. Both of my fermenters have heaters on them, and I can crank the crap out of them and take them probably well beyond 100 degrees. So I don't have that problem. But hey, thinking outside the box, man, wrapping an electric blanket around it, if it works, do it, man. More power to you. Anxious to hear how that turns out. Something I haven't tried yet is actually blending a beer and a mead together to create a braggot. And, we go back to the BJCP rules. There's nothing in the book that says it has to be made, 50% of one or the other. It's, that harmonious blend, that we've talked about so much in the past. So anxious to hear more about that project, Ryan, as it continues on. Something I thought. Before we get to that, let me do this. Sticker U. Sticker U should be your one-stop shop for all your sticker needs: labels, decals, even iron-ons and magnets. If you made it to the Iron Bee this year, you more than likely went home with a few stickers from Sticker U. Put your homebrew label on a growler, personalize a six-pack carrier with a custom-made sticker, or create some fun removable tattoos of your homebrew label and pass around. Reasonably priced, StickerU.com sponsors of the 2019 Iron Bee. Check them out, StickerU.com. Your one-stop shop for all your sticker needs. Hey, kegging, carbing, and that kind of thing, probably a topic I don't know that we've ever covered. I'd have to go back through the several years of show notes that we've accumulated and see, but I don't know that we've really ever got into a serious discussion about kegging and carbing. This is actually a question, guys, that was brought up on the survey. Thank you for all of those folks who have taken the time and gone over to the website, meathouse.com/survey, I believe, and actually have taken the survey, have given us some pretty honest answers to the questions that we're asking. One of them, Jeff and Ryan, was on kegging. There may be some folks out there who just may not know enough about it to get involved. And I thought what we'd do is take it around the table. Let's start with Jeff. I know you keg. You've got a small kegging system there. Walk us through what your procedures are when you keg.
So, I start with a clean keg, and that's important. You got to get the crud from the last iteration out. So I let that sit in a little bit of PBW at the bottom. More often than not, I will either run some PBW and then some Star Sand through the input and output lines as well, just to make sure that everything is kind of just going smooth. There's no crud in those lines, because if you look inside the keg, there is a little. There's a little post for the gas to go in, and there's a long post that goes to the very bottom of the keg in most cases, unless you got one of the fancy, clear beer setups that JD is.
Yeah, like I got,
yeah. And, you want to make sure that you don't get anything hanging out in there and adding nasty off flavors just because, you let that keg sit for a month or two and there was a little bit of crud in there and stuff happened. So you start with a clean keg. I pretty much just push that right into the keg for my fermenter with the auto siphon, and I carb it up. I want to get an inline carbing setup made. I got started on it, and it's kind of in my workshop of half-finished projects. That's becoming unfortunately ubiquitous for me. So at the moment, what I'm doing is, I take the keg, I stick it in my chest freezer and let it get nice and cold, and then I push about 25 psi of pressure into it from my CO2 tank. Shake that up, let it sit, shake it again. I add more as needed to keep that pressure pretty good, and I find, if I get about 25 psi and let that sit for a couple days after shaking, I get a pretty good level of carbonation that is maybe a little overcarbonated, but it's pleasant to my palate.
Yeah.
So when it comes time to serve it, then usually I don't have a kegerator at the moment. I'm kind of talking the wife into that one too. So when we have a party or something like that where I'm going to serve kegs, I'll usually get a cooler. I'll put the keg in the cooler. I'll surround the keg with just crushed ice to keep it cold, and then I'll keep a serving pressure of about 8 psi on the regulator. Just keep that wide open for the duration of the party. That way, there's always pressure getting added when people tap off, and there's more room in there getting displaced. My local homebrew store has this great little setup that I got, and you guys saw it at the IRB. It's just a little tap attached to the output port, the liquid out, and simple, I really like that. Keeps it stupid simple. Before then, I was using like the little party tap on a 5-foot hose, which is not bad. But you can drop those and you get puddles of stuff on the bottom. It's not fun.
I hate those things.
I'm liking the little. I'm liking that little tap that I've got, and I'm probably going to get 2 or 3 more of them because, at this point I'm sitting on 6 kegs. So
there you go.
We could always have a good party rotation going.
I was eyeballing that little setup you had, and I thought, gee, I need to get one of those.
They're pretty cool.
I got several of these picnic tap things that I put on just to taste test with, and you're right. I mean, I've got 2 kegerators here. One is a double. It's actually a single spout on it, but it holds 2 kegs. That's what I usually refrigerate things in. I might have 1 active keg on it, but the other one will have a picnic tap on it, and I have closed the door to the little refrigerator and squeezed the valve on the tap, and 10 minutes later, I'm looking at this little puddle of foam underneath the door of the refrigerator. It's like, oh my god. So anyway, so I've been there and done that. I'll wrap this one up. Let's throw it over to Ryan. Ryan, I know you've got a nitro setup, which is a little bit different. Tell us about how you go through your kegging with a nitro setup. And what's the advantage to having a nitro system?
Well, everything's better on nitro.
Everything's better on nitro.
So I got into kegging because it's maybe a little bit of a different reason. I don't mind bottle conditioning my beers and my meads. With my beers, I like bottle conditioning them because it makes them a little more protected to oxidation, and it makes them a little more shelf stable. It lasts a little longer. When you have the bottle condition, with you're putting a little more fermentable sugars and with some yeast in there, and then any oxygen that is in that bottle gets consumed. So when you bottle off of a keg or something, there is that oxygen that's sitting on top of your beer or your mead. But when you bottle condition it, that it gets consumed. So it protects a little better. I didn't mind. I don't mind the process of bottling my beers and bottle conditioning them. I like that they're mobile, and I can take them places. I can give them away, and I like that I can give them away as well and not have any issues. And then I can choose what I want to drink. I don't have to worry about how long once on the keg or keeping the kegs at the right temperature or that kind of thing. So I'm not trying to make the case here for bottling, but
sure.
that was what was where I was. Now, what I also enjoy are stouts, particularly stouts that were on nitro. Think of like Guinness and some other stouts that are served that way. Well, you can't achieve that doing a bottle conditioning. So I wanted to
talk about the difference before you start, Ryan. Talk about the difference between you mentioned stouts. The difference between nitro and CO2 and what it means to something like a stout. What is the difference there?
Well, if anyone's had a Guinness, you know that you get the bubbles are, appearance wise, the bubbles are finer and they appear to cascade down. And on a mouthfeel, it's creamier. It has this more perception of body and a creaminess to the beer, as well as the mead. I've had I started putting some of my meads on nitro as well. So and some people will tell you that you need to have a blend of oxygen and you need to have a blend of you don't do pure nitrogen, you do CO2 and nitrogen, and that's definitely with larger tanks. I have seen that. I have smaller tanks, and you can use the preloaded kind of nitrogen. I don't know what they're called. They're kind of shotgun shell sized cartridges,
little metal capsule looking things. Yeah.
And so anyway, I use those. Well, so anyway, getting back to my story here, I wanted, to have that option. I wanted to do that. I wanted some of my stouts on that. Then I tried some things with some melomels on nitro, which were amazing. Think of like a big, stone fruit melomel, and with this Guinness style carbonation, and it's unbelievable. I mean, lemon. My lemon mel that I put on nitro is still several people around here's favorite. So that's all I do. I only nitro keg, or keg and then put on the nitro tap, I should say. So you do have a different tap. It's a different tap setup. It is a different different regulator, or a different setup. I think maybe the regulator's the same. But you need the same keg. You just need some different other pieces that go along with it to have that nitrogen setup. And I recommend doing it. I mean, I recommend if you've already got a keg set up, you just need a few extra pieces, and add that, and then play around with it. I mean, it's one thing, yes, you put your stouts or maybe a porter, or for a little while it was trendy to do IPAs on nitro. I haven't seen any of those lately, but I know for a while it was. But now think about your meads, and not just your braggots, but melomels, or even maybe your session, that passion fruit hibiscus session mead or something. I have not done it with a metheglin, even a traditional. It just adds something different to it. I've also used it for coffee. So, I would cold brew coffee, and you put cold brew coffee in there, and then you put so kind of like you go to one of those, fancy coffee places, and they charge you like $5 for regular black coffee on nitro.
Oh my God.
Well, you can do that no problem. You just make some cold brew coffee, you throw it in the keg, you carb it up with the nitro, and you pour it out, and it's excellent that way.
That's getting pretty exotic.
Yeah, I've also heard. I've also played around with some batch cocktails. So let's say you want to do, Moscow mules or something. Yeah. Oh, a really fun one is mimosas. So
my God, yeah.
My wife loves mimosas a lot here, and we still do it, not quite as frequently, but makes up a big batch of mimosa, like make a gallon of mimosa or something for a brunch party and put that in the keg, and then pour it out, and you don't have to use, at that point, you don't have to use champagne because you're not relying, or sparkling wine,
right? Because
you're not relying on the carbonation of the champagne to, make a mimosa what it is. So you can use, if you've got a nice white piment that you like, maybe you want to use your white piment and some orange juice and then maybe some orange liqueur. I always like to make my mimosas with some Grand Marnier. But anyway, you put your orange juice, your Grand Marnier, your white wine or white piment in the keg, carb it up on nitro and put it right in the champagne glass, and I'll tell you that there's a conversation piece right there for your next brunch party.
I can see.
That sounds like something we need to add to our entertaining lineup. I tell you.
I can see all of our listeners running out to their local homebrew store tomorrow morning when they hear this episode. Hey, I want to buy a nitro setup. And you've been bugging me about one too, and I that's probably the one thing left I need to do. My system, I've got the 2 kegerators. I got a single, and then I've got my big 3-horse 3-valve setup. Actually, it holds. I think I've got 5. Or 4. No, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5. It'll hold 5 kegs. But the 5th keg is one of those short 5-gallon kegs that fits up on the. It's where the motor sets underneath the deal, and so inside the freezer there's this little shelf, and so that one keg sets right up there. It's just perfect. My kegging experience when I first started. Like everybody else, watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos. How do you keg your beer? And so I would fill it full of my brew, whether it is mead or beer, whatever I was doing. Refrigerate it. That's very important. It works a whole lot better if it's refrigerated. The small cooler, I can get it down around 40 degrees. I leave it in there for 2 days. And then I would bring it out, hook up the CO2 to it, and set it over here by my desk. And while I was watching a YouTube video or something, I would turn it sideways on the floor and just kind of rock it with my feet back and forth for like 20 minutes. Turning up the CO2, start out around 10 pounds and then crank it up to 15 pounds and 20 pounds, and do that method. Well, that got old quick. And then I discovered that you could buy these lids, keg lids, that have this dangling tube made, just a silicone or high pressure tube, a plastic tube, plastic line that kind of hangs down below the keg lid, and then to that is attached a 0.5 micron oxygenator stone. And I find that works a lot better because I put the keg in the cooler in the freezer, get it cold, and then I attach the CO2 connector to it. I set the pressure at like 40. Actually, that's not right. I set the pressure at 10 pounds to start. And then about every 3-4 hours, I'll bump it up another 5 pounds until I get up to around 35 to 40 pounds sometimes. Now, again, this is, I like it highly carb. All the stuff that I do, I like highly carb, so I'm not worried about what volume I want it carved at. I don't get that scientific with it. But I have found that, after 3-4 days, of it setting at the pressure that I set at, it's carved just nicely. So that system works out very nicely for me. However, before all that starts, okay, I take my empty keg once it's been emptied, and the cleaning process is very simple. I take my kegs apart all the way. I take the posts off. Those get cleaned in PBW and then soaked in Star San, a sanitizer solution. And I take the dip tubes out. Jeff, I know that you've got a similar setup. I order new O-rings for all the posts and the lid. Every time I order a keg, I'll order a couple of sets of those. So I've got some spares. I don't change the O-rings all the time, but a lot of times I'll buy a used keg, and there's nothing wrong with them. The outside might have a few dings on them or whatever, but as long as it holds pressure, I don't have a problem with it. But a lot of times they won't replace some of the O-rings. So as soon as I get one, I get all new rubber on it. All the O-rings are new. The dip tubes, the whole 9 yards, even the big ring around the lid. I use a wax. This is a food grade, and I should have brought the darn thing over here to my desk. I don't know the name of it. Comes in a squeeze tube. You can pick it up at your local homebrew supply store, but it's just it's a food grade wax, and I use those on all the O-rings, and it doesn't take a lot. Just a little tiny bit between your thumb and forefinger, rub it around, and just spread it around on the O-rings and on that keg lid. It doesn't take a whole lot at all. What it does is help provide a good seal for those O-rings in that keg lid. So one, and then the other thing that I have that I highly recommend is a carboy cleaner. I know there's one out there that's patented. I don't remember the specific name of it, but I'm sure you can find it. Go to Amazon, look it up. Google if you have to. I don't know where I'd be without Google. I wish I had Google when I was a kid in school. Anyway, homework would have been so much easier then, I could have done my homework in 10 minutes instead of 3 hours. Anyway, so this carboy cleaner is a long plastic stick. Okay, on the end of it are these, I think there's 3 or 4 little felt things that stick out about, 8 or 9 inches, whatever it is. And on the end of those are these little scrubber pads. And I used to use those, when I had my carboys, I would use those to scrub my carboys out. I use them on the kegs also. I just fill my keg with a gallon's worth of PBW in a mixture, and then I just stuff that on my drill, put that carboy cleaner down in there, and I scrub my keg out. Very important to clean your kegs and sanitize them. They get filled with sanitizer. They sit in there for several hours sometimes. I'll pressure them up, run it through the dip tubes. I have been using, as Ryan said, this, or Jeff, this, what do you call it? Oh my God, just went south. This thing that attaches to the out part, rather than having a dip tube, this thing floats. Okay,
clear beer.
Clear beer, yeah, clear beer attachment. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It works like a champ. But at any rate, sanitize the whole contents of your keg. I put it all together, and of course, racking, just like racking into a carboy. The important thing is once you are done. It doesn't stop there. You secure your lid, and I burp it off with some CO2. It's very important to bleed some of that oxygen out of there. Just takes a couple of pounds of pressure. Stick your connector on there from your CO2 device, and just burp the bleeder valve a few times to bleed out some of that oxygen, and that's it. If I want it carved, it goes into the cooler, into the freezer for a couple of days, and then I carb from to my liking from there. Like I say, using this device that just kind of dangles down from the lid of the keg. I find that that's the easiest way. I don't have to rock the thing on the floor for 20 minutes. But even at that rate, I don't have any. You could, if you want to do it by the numbers, you put the lid on and you set your carb pressure to where you want whatever volume you want, but it takes like several weeks for it to get to that point. I'm in more of a hurry. So that's my that's how I do it. The other thing that I do also is I'll transfer, since I've got everything. I'm starting to toss out my 5-gallon carboys. I'm replacing them with kegs. So when I rack out of the fermenter, it goes directly into a keg, and it will set in there until it clears. Now, after it clears, it's an easy process to hook up to my CO2 system and rack from that, let's call it the dirty keg, into the clean keg. And that's just a matter of setting up, making a couple of lines up, and go from one keg to the other, and you pressurize the one keg. You have to set the bleeder valve on the other in the open position, obviously, because if it pressures up, then transfer stops. You can filter that way. I've got a whole house filter that I use a 0.5 micron filter in on occasion. Works like a champ. So that's how I do my kegging setup. And I highly recommend Ryan consider and tell you stories about broken carboys. I can tell you that I broke one already. Jeff probably had a bad experience or two, but I highly recommend changing from glass carboys to kegs. If you've had that issue in the past. So anyway, that's how I do it, guys.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that segment was because of somebody filling out our survey and letting us know what they wanted to hear more about.
Yep.
So again, if you haven't taken the survey, please take the Meat House survey. It's in the show notes. It's on the website. It's a quick survey. It won't take you more than a couple of minutes, and you can let us know what types of subjects you'd like to hear more about, and we were happy to do that. Of course, if you are also a key holder, you can leave us a note on the key holder page, and we will make sure to get to that one or those as well as quickly as we can.
Yeah, if you've got an idea, something that you want us to explore, some topic that you want further information on, you'd like the Meat House to discuss a little further, even if we can find a guest to come on the show to talk about a subject matter that we might be unfamiliar with, please leave us a message. It's very simple. You can tweet us at the Meat House on the Twitter deal, and then of course the Facebook page. I mean, that's easy enough to do as well. In fact, we've had quite a few listeners, Jeff and Ryan, get a hold of us. A couple of conversations that I've been involved in on our Facebook page, talking to guys about different subject matter.
Yeah. So again, please let us know what you're interested in, what you'd like to hear about, and we will do our best to make sure that you get hear what you'd like.
Absolutely. Facebook. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're good for Facebook, and I was feeling itchy. I was going to jump right in with one.
Yeah, go ahead, do it.
So, this is an interesting one, guys. This is from Dan. He wants to know if anyone's had success making banana mead. His first attempt, and I'll just read it. My first attempt was a failure. I used 1118 yeast, clover honey, and about 12 pounds of organic bananas.
Oh, wow.
I added some of the sanitized banana peels into the fermenter for 4 days, as he'd had several people suggest to him. It fermented fine and finished out at 12% ABV. My yield was terrible. After racking off of the banana sludge, I only had 1.5 gallons of mead. It tastes terrible, like cold banana peels. I'm just thinking of that, the song from The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, and he's singing with the Grinch, and he's like, you're a slimy banana peel. A couple things on this. He doesn't give the recipe, so I don't know exactly, his proportions here of how much honey he used, what kind of nutrients he might have used, the size of his batch, anything like that. So I'll give you 3 things on banana mead that I've experienced or I'm planning. Okay, so the first one was that the first time I did a banana mead, I boiled the bananas. But let me go back a step. I bought bananas, and then I, waited till they were like black.
Right.
So pretty much completely black. The peels are completely black. I cut them up, with the peels on them. So just cut them up on a cutting board. They're slimy, they're black. I threw them in essentially a grain bag or a strainer bag, and threw them in a pot of boiling water and boiled them. So I boiled, and then I cooled. I took the strainer bag out and cooled the water, and then added the honey to that. Now that gave me some pretty good banana flavor for doing it the first time. You do use a lot of bananas. I think I was using like 3 pounds. I think 3 pounds per gallon or something. I think it was a 3-gallon batch. You use like 9 or 10 pounds of bananas. So you use a lot of bananas, but you're not going to end up with banana sludge, because you're just boiling and then removing. I've done the same process with nuts when I've wanted to add nuts to my mead, where I've taken peanuts and I've boiled peanuts in a strainer bag and then taken that out and then cooled, and added the honey and gone from there. So that process works. So I've done that process. Now, banana mead, I've heard and experienced, can be tough to clear. Not impossible. Mine cleared up, but not. But there's a lot of those bananas, a lot of starches maybe that are making it harder to clear. So the next time I did a banana mead, I took out a food dehydrator and I dehydrated, like 5 pounds of bananas. And then, so they're dehydrated. And then I put them in a blender just to get them, because a couple were still, they weren't like potato chip crispy, but they were dehydrated. But then I put them in the freezer, just to get them harder, I'll say, or more solid. And then I put them in the food processor and essentially ended up with like a banana flour. You can call it that. Yeah. And then I put the banana flour in the primary, when I was with bentonite. So I had bentonite right in there, and fermented that way. I'll tell you, the flavor wasn't any better. It didn't really clear any better. Just found a new way to do it. And for all the extra steps that it takes, so slicing, dehydrating, freezing, pulverizing, I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody else can try it and see if they like it as well. But I didn't see any additional benefit to doing that. So now I am going to make another mead here that's going to incorporate bananas, and I am just going to use the some banana products from our good friends at Amoretti, and I'm going to see how that works. Now I'm not jumping behind it, saying this is the best way to do it. I'm saying this is what I'm going to try, and it'll be interesting to see if this flavor is as good as using the banana boil method that I had done earlier.
Yeah.
Before I toss over to you guys, before I forget, want to remind anybody out there, if you have worked with bananas either successfully or less than successfully, please let us know. Shoot us a note. Facebook, Key Club, or via the website or something. Let us know, because I'd love to know how you guys are working with bananas. Bananas is something that I've liked working with a little bit, but won't say that I haven't found that secret sauce to quite yet. Jeff, how about you? You used bananas?
So I've not made a straight up banana mead. In point of fact, I've not really used bananas very much. I've been kind of gun shy on that because I have seen a number of Facebook posts about I was making a banana mead and my airlock got clogged and I came home to a shotgun blast of banana crud on my ceiling. I've actually seen a number of those and went, well, okay, banana, something I need to try.
Yeah.
The first time I put bananas in a mead was actually a week ago when I was making up that big strawberry mead that I was talking about. I looked at a few different recipes for strawberries, and there were a number that recommended adding a little bit of banana for both body and just to bring out some of that strawberry flavor. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of echoed in advice that our former co-host Mississippi gave. Adding a half of a overripe banana just to add some body to the mead. Kind of in the same vein, I got a number of months ago, I got some mostly ripe, bordering on overripe bananas from a farmer's market for a really great price. Said, okay, well, make some banana bread or something. I stuck those in the freezer, and I used a few of them. I had a few of them left over, so I pulled 3. I sliced them up and put them in with 20 pounds of strawberries, and we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping there's some good body to this mead, but my banana experience has been pretty spare so far.
Yeah, I think that. I haven't had any of those issues, blowing the airlock or having just tons and tons of sludge, because I'm not actually putting the fruit or the peel in the fermenter. I'm boiling all that flavor out and then using that banana water, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the ceiling-saving way to do it.
My only experience with bananas, and like Jeff, I've kind of shied away because of some of the things I've read. But my only experience with bananas has been in my 2 port projects. Like Jeff, just using the extra ripened bananas as a mouthfeel component. They don't add any flavor. It just adds a creamier mouthfeel, kind of increases the viscosity a little bit on your tongue. That's how I've used mine, but they are messy. I mean, I take a very ripe banana and I cut it into 1-inch chunks, skin and all, and I have water that I have heated to 180 degrees, actually a little higher than that. Because the temperature will drop once you put your bananas in, but they're basically sanitized at 180 degrees for about 10 minutes, and then they go into a bag and go into the fermenter during fermentation. And I guarantee you, when you pull the bag, it's a mess. In fact, I have just thrown the bag away. I don't even want to clean the bag out. That's what a sticky, messy clump of goop. Worse than baby diapers. for you folks out there who have little infants at home. Dad, this is like worse than baby diapers. Just throw the bag away. They're cheap. So that's my only use of bananas. So I kind of shy away from them. I got one I'm going to pull right off our Facebook page. This is actually from Nathan Wygand. He's an avid listener here at the Mead House. This is around May 10th. He writes, "Hey, I'm pretty new mead maker on my second batch and just found your podcast a few weeks ago and decided to go." Okay, my screen just went blank. All right. Found your podcast a few weeks ago and decided to go back and listen to them all from the beginning because they are so informative. Thank you, Nathan. Hey, currently up to episode 8. One thing I'm wondering is how you guys do the gravity measurements when you are mixing the initial must. Do you keep mixing and pulling out a sample, or do you do something like drop the hydrometer in the bucket? Thanks, and keep up the great work. Nathan, I've got 2 giant fermenters. What giant? They're 7-gallon stainless steel fermenters. So when I'm mixing my must up, I'm mixing in the fermenter, and I drop the hydrometer directly in, and I'm constantly taking measurements as I'm adding honey. Something you want to remember, different honeys have different sugar content. So, if you're following a recipe and it says add 3 pounds of honey to get to this hydrometer reading, that's not always the case. I've the way I do my honey, if I know I want to reach a certain gravity, okay, I know about how many pounds of honey it takes to get close, and then I start dropping the hydrometer in directly into my fermenters and taking my readings there. But I would suggest, if you're doing it that way, if you don't have the capability of just dropping your fermenter in like I do, then yes, take some samples often. Add a few. Add a pound of honey and take a reading. Add another pound of honey and take a reading if you know you're close. Ryan, how do you help Nathan out here? How do you do your gravity readings when you're putting your must together?
So for the original gravity reading, I've got a pretty good sense of the weight of honey and that is going to hit pretty much that gravity. And so I just made a lot of batches. If I'm using, the honey, I know, I've got a pretty good sense where it's going to be. So I kind of do something similar in that, okay, so for this, I'm going to use, 6 pounds of honey or 12 pounds of honey, whatever it is. And I put that in there. And then I get to that, I'll measure it. Now, most of the stuff I do, if I'm off by like 1 point or 2 points, I don't fuss over it. But yeah, I want it to be right in that ballpark. So if I have to add a little something more, I do it. But yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it, and I think you're going to get, now if I'm adding something like the fruits that I've never worked with before or that, I don't know as well, or so, it's a puree or something like that, then yeah, I will do the estimating ahead of time. So I kind of estimate, okay, this puree is going to add this many gravity points, and then I'm going to add this honey that I know is going to add this many gravity points, and I mix up the batch and I'll measure it, but I'm usually right in the ballpark. I'm usually pretty much right there. Now, I'll say it again. I've never been at a point where, let's say I'm estimating that it's going to hit 1070 and it hits 1069 or 1072. I'm not gonna do the additions of either more honey or more water to get it exact to 1070. 1069 or 1072 is going to be fine for me. So that's my approach. That's the way I look at it. And I kind of have that almost that horseshoe, that hand grenade and horseshoe mentality of hitting that OG.
Jeff, you got the same fermenter that I have, that Brewtech 7-gallon stainless steel deal. How do you handle your original gravity? I just drop mine right into the fermenter as I'm mixing my must. How do you do yours?
It depends a little bit on what the target gravity is, because if I'm going for a session mead or something in that standard strength, I actually have, instead of a hydrometer, I have a reflectometer. The cool thing about using one of these for mixing up a batch is that it only takes 2 or 3 drops. So I have my little eyedropper sitting in some star sand. Add some honey, pull a couple drops, drop, take a reading. Like Ryan, I have a target of OG that I'm aiming for, but I'm willing to accept a couple points north or south of that number. You like anything else, you take good notes and you just make a note that, hey, was aiming for 1080, got 1078. Who cares? You're going to get most of the way to the target ABV you're looking for, one way or the other. But yeah, the nice part about that is that, you only need a couple drops. It's really easy to take a sample, and you don't need to worry about bubbles and things like that can screw up trying to drop a hydrometer into a freshly mixed batch of must. If I'm going for something high, like I was doing with this strawberry guy, then I just I have a bottle of Star Sand in a spray bottle, and I just hit the hydrometer with that, drop it in, take a reading. Usually you have to spin it to get the bubbles off, and it's a little bit time consuming and headachy, but that's how you get the read. That's kind of my approach to it.
And let's take it all the way around the table, Jeff. We're about ready to run the gamut here on our episode. Let's run the limit on our episode. What do you got for a Facebook friend or even a Reddit? I know you're big on Reddit.
Yeah, I've got one from Reddit that's a pretty short one, and I think I know the answer, but I'll go ahead and ask. User BradTech34 asks, I found a lot of conflicting opinions about the size and type of bottle to use when bottling mead. Small, narrow, dark, cap, flip top, wine, cork, etc. I have about a gallon I'll be bottling in a month. I'd like to use the best bottle. I've been aging in a cardboard since October, no back sweetening. It's a Clover mead. What do you guys like for bottles? What do you consider when you're bottling a mead?
Kegs.
If you just got 1 gallon, and I'm assuming you just got 5-gallon kegs. I know they make smaller kegs.
Yeah.
I've been looking at those Cannonball little 1 and 2 gallon guys myself, but let's assume you got 1 gallon. What are you going to put in? What are you going to think about when it comes to bottling that guy up?
I've done the cork thing. I've done the 375s. I've done the wine bottle. I'm so tired of that. You know what I'm doing now? I'm putting everything in beer bottles.
Yep.
I don't have to buy corks. I don't have to get the Italian, whatever you call that. It's a giant thing. It's like a floor corker thing. The thing's so big. My simple little countertop bottle capper, Italian bottle capper, whatever it's called, works just fine. Beer bottles, 12-ounce beer bottles. I find that that's the perfect serving size. I'll just end it there and go to Ryan.
I've done everything. I've used dark wine bottles. I've used clear wine bottles. I've used standard size, magnum size wine bottles. Mini 12-ounce wine bottles. Beer cap bottles of bomber size, liter size, 22-ounce bomber size, 12-ounce, and 6-ounce. And I'll tell you that it only matters as to what you're putting in them and how long you want to keep it there. We've talked a little bit in the past about how some of the corks are rated at different years. So some of the cheap corks you can buy are good for, they say, up to 2 years, or some are up to 10 years, or things like that. And crown caps are good at least for 10 years, if not longer, depending on, there hasn't been, from what I understand, there haven't been studies that have checked crown caps of longer than 10 years. They're still waiting, in another 5 years or 10 years, they can tell you what the efficacy is of a crown cap after 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go back to 1 gallon batch. A 1 gallon batch is going to give you trying to do the quick math here.
Like 2 6-packs?
Less than two six packs of 12-ounce beer bottles.
Right.
10 or 10, yeah.
Yeah, so depends on what you're making. If you're making something that is you're going to want to drink 12 ounces of, put it in a beer bottle. And here's the reason: beer bottles are cheap, and you can you can get them for free if you want, and from people, and you can scrape the labels off them, and you're fine. So beer bottles are great and cheap. If you are going with something like a really high gravity port style mead or something that you're only going to want a small amount of, get the 6-ounce bottles. I mean, yeah, you got to buy them. They're a little more expensive, but get these little 187 little 6-ounce bottles and bottle them up in 6-ounce bottles. Now, the one caveat to that is, I don't know what you're making. If you're making like a braggot, and you want to be really light sensitive to it, you got to be careful, because most commonly you'll see clear bottles at that size. I think about serving size. So a lot of the times when I do larger batches, I bottle my meads, and they don't have to be carbonated. You can put something still with a crown cap, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be carbonated at all. But anyway, I think it's serving size. So a lot of times I'll make like session meads, and I'll put them in bomber bottles, so 22-ounce crown cap, brown bottles. And it's because I can open one and fill 2 glasses up with it. Each get about a 10-ounce pour, and it's great to share. It's great to do that way. And that half as many bottles.
Yeah.
So I think about those things. Think about the way you're going to drink it. That's the 2 things to think about: is what's going in it and how you're going to drink it. If it is something going in it that you want to age for a really long time, or that you want to drink right away, does presentation matter, or is it more about the utility? And then think about, how do I want to drink this? Do I want to drink it in, cordial glasses, like a 6-ounce pour or 2 3-ounce pours? Or is it something that I want to drink 12 ounces of myself, or share, each have a 6-ounce pour, or a 22-ounce bottle or larger, and having, 2 larger pours. So I think about that, and then go from there. Now, again, if you want to go dollars for donuts, your brown beer bottle is the way to go. They're cheap. Caps are cheap. You can get a capper for cheap, and they're very easy. It's very easy, very cheap, very efficient and effective way to bottle your stuff and go from there. But those are just some other things to think about as you start making more and more batches and start bottling more of what you're doing.
Keg. Like I said, keg.
Keg's a great option. I'm going to echo what JD and Ryan have said. Anymore these days, the only time I use a a 750 ml standard wine bottle is if I'm making a mead to give to somebody as a gift. And then, I go all out. I do a pretty label. I do the foil wrap, shrink wrap thing over the cork, whole 9 yards. That's the only time I touch wine bottles anymore. The 12-ounce beer bottles are awesome. The oxygen barrier on those caps, like Ryan said, they're rated for a very long storage time. To me, that 12-ounce serving size is really ideal for just about any kind of any which way I want to go with it. If I want to make a braggot and I want to say, okay, well, I'm going to have a 12-ounce bottle of braggot. Cool. I've got a very easy way to keep track of how much I've drank for the night. If I got to work the next morning, cut my limit at 2. That's it. If I've got friends over and I've got a higher gravity like wine strength mead that I'm serving, well, geez, that's 2 5-6 ounce wine glass size servings right there. If I've just got something weird that I want to pour out little tasters of, hey, that's 4 3-ounce servings. Not a lot of waste. I don't have to worry about putting a half empty bottle in the fridge and hoping I drink it before it oxidizes. It's the best compromise to me. And like Ryan said again, they're cheap. I'm one of those vicarious little drinkers that will go do the build your own 6-packs, and I always end up with empty bottles afterwards.
Yeah, there you go. I've got this little nifty setup. I'm kidding around. I keg everything. That's a given here at the Mead House headquarters. But if I want to bottle anything, I got this nifty little rig that I set up on my kegerator. I bottle right out of the tap. It's so simple. Sure. That's how I put stuff in a bottle for the Iron B. I had stuff sitting in the keg. I didn't have to open up the freaking kegerator. Well, I kind of did because I'd set the regulator, down to like 2 pounds, but. Close the lid and put my little attachment on my valve and went to bottling. So last summer our friend John Blichman sent me a beer gun. There you go.
So now if I have a gallon and a half left in the keg and I really need another keg for a project that's getting done, it's a real simple matter to take 10 or 20 beer bottles, get them sanitized, line them up, yep. Beer gun, whatever's left in that keg into bottles. They're all going to be served at a great carbonated temperature. I've got a fresh keg that I can clean out and put new product in. It's a great way to keep things moving and keep things fresh in the cellar, so to speak.
There you go. Hey, and I hear the music starting already, so we're going to leave it right there. A special thanks to our guest tonight here at the Mead House, home mead maker and Iron B winner Brett Guthrie, for stopping by all the way from Florida. Hey, in the meantime, happy mead making. Now, look, I don't know what's going on here, but last week someone ordered 3 boxes of pineapples and a case of those little paper umbrellas. I don't know what's going on. The tiki lamps are still all over the yard, and a sign out front that says coming soon, the Mead House Luau. You two are up to something. I just don't know what. But hey, that's it for this episode. That's it for this episode. Ryan, hit the lights. Jeff, slam that barn door shut. We'll be back next week. Episode 128 of the Mead House. Hey, we're gone.